Welcome to the Power Monkey Podcast, where we chat with the best in the world about what they do. I'm your host, Dave Durante, with my co-host, Chad Vaughn, and on today's episode, we have Mike Lombardi. Mike is a performance manager and works in strategic partnerships for Whoop. We're really excited to have him on. He's also a former high-level rower, so he comes more from the endurance world, but is working with Whoop for a number of years now. We've been trying to get Mike and Whoop out to camp as well. We think we'd be a great fit. We thought the timing was really well because Whoop just announced their 4.0 upgrade. So we wanted to go into a little bit about what those hardware and software upgrades look like, as well as maybe what are some of the questions that a new user might have with regard to how it can help someone's performance, the strain side of it, the recovery side of it. What does it mean as an athlete in terms of the feedback you get? I've been using mine for a number of years. I had some specific questions as to how I can optimize my usage of my Whoop. But we thought it was a really great episode, and we hope you guys understand a little bit more of the technology that can go along with just the fitness side of what you guys are doing on a regular basis in the gym. Enjoy. Well, hey, Mike, how you doing, man? It's so great to have you on. I know we've been trying to do this for a while, so I appreciate you taking the time to be with us today.
Yeah, happy to be on. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So before we get into kind of some of the more in-depth pieces of what Whoop's all about, can you tell us a little bit about what your role is with the company and how you got involved with them?
Yeah, I have the benefit of having been at Whoop for a relatively long time. 3 years is like a dinosaur in this current iteration of Whoop stages. So I joined Whoop as part of it was called the Elite Performance Team back then, and that's we had a big focus on sort of B2B relationships, so working with pro teams, athletes, military divisions. So my background's in performance and physiology. So a lot of what I was doing was digging deep in the data and working with these teams and their coaches and their performance staff to sort of optimize training schedules, keep people healthy. And in that process, we actually won a few national championships, a World Series, lots of all really cool stuff with people like utilizing Whoop data. And then as Whoop continued to grow, you evolve with the organization, and I ran strategic partnerships for about a year, which then led me to my next piece, which is CrossFit. So I largely manage all things in CrossFit now. We've grown big enough that people need to be specialized now, which is cool. So everyone that's kind of, in the early days was very much we were generalists and had to wear a lot of different hats. And now it's, everyone's kind of refining what we're doing. So, I put together the CrossFit partnership and kind of manage everything in the space, the sphere, and still do performance stuff, but that's the main goal now.
Okay, so you went from more of the data side to dealing with the CrossFit side of things, and you're CrossFit yourself?
I am, I guess later in life, or my background's originally in rowing. I played basketball, and then I coached for a lot of years at the national team level, and that's kind of what led me to Whoop. I was helping it was CrossFit Back Bay. Now it's Invictus Fenway in Boston with their conditioning. So, just kind of getting in there, building some engines a little bit, and they got to go to the games a few times, which was a good intro for me. And the Whoop offices just happened to be right behind CrossFit Fenway. Mm-hmm. So we were one of the first groups to actually get on Whoop, as Whoop was saying, hey, let's see if CrossFit is sort of a viable market. And mm-hmm. Then I joined in basically 3 years ago, like this week.
Amazing. So let's get into a little bit of the exciting news that has happened recently with Whoop, the new launch of the 4.0. Can you give us a little insight into what the new features look like? What's special about this new iteration versus previous models?
Yeah, so there's a good amount coming with this new iteration. So each new hardware development has these sort of software unlocks that can be built in the future too. So what it launches with is just the base model, and then it's how far can we go in this sort of iteration. So first thing, the difference between the 3 and the 4.0 is it's 33% smaller. So people that have them so far are saying it's very noticeable in terms of how it fits on the wrist. It's a bit more comfortable, and I think that it fits me fine. Like I'm 6'7", so like the Whoop strap it's good size for me. I'm actually interested with what the smaller size will feel like. But so it's 33% smaller. Battery life is the same. It's, one of the, it has this feature that's sort of like quick release in terms of switching bands in and out. Everyone wants to kind of match their outfits, accessorize. Instead of having to thread the bands, it's very simple. You just kind of slide it on, slide it off, done. It's done in about 4 seconds. So that's exciting. That's the basic ones. Really cool stuff is this sort of haptic alarm. So we have this little ability to, wake you up via vibration on the wrist now. So the sleep coach has been largely evolved in the sense of it's not just what time do you need to go to bed. You can say, I want to wake up in the green or set your alarm. So we will wake you up with the highest chance that, you can have a green recovery and gently wake you up. So that's really interesting and exciting thing that's taken some time and years to develop. We've got full body wearability now, which is probably one of the cooler things. With that quick release, it just means it's really easy to get bands on and off. And now we have developed a full apparel line that will continue to have more products, but that you can wear your Whoop throughout your body. So for men, we have tech shirts, we have like boxer briefs. For women, there's sports bras, bralettes, like tights, and you can just pop it in real quick, boom. And that data quality has already been validated with our sort of lab team. So really, really cool stuff. Waterproof battery. I know hopefully nobody will destroy their batteries in the process now. So this is like cutting edge battery technology. We're the first people to use this new type of battery, and it's hopefully going to result in a lot of less people needing battery replacements from walking into the shower.
But there's an oxygen saturation feature as well, right?
Yeah. So that's an unlock, right? If you're in the app. In terms of software. So that's just like the hardware stuff. The hardware allows that software capability. So the two new main features are SpO2, so blood oxygenation, and skin temp. So we have created something called a health report and these sort of like health metrics, and we know what your normal range is based off of your data. So every morning when you wake up, in the past, it's been like, do I know my range? Is this good? What does it kind of mean? And now we're kind of defining it for you. So if you're in your Whoop app and you're clicking on, health report or your metrics, it's gonna say, yes, this is in range. You have 4 out of 5 metrics in range, or if you don't have the 4.0 yet, just 3 out of 3. And then you actually have a PDF report that you can generate and then show to primary care or a PT or anybody, a coach that you're working with. So here's kind of what my data has looked like over the last 30 days compared to my 6-month averages, stuff like that. So it's creating a fuller picture of health that can be shared and then utilized and helping people understand, right? It's if we've gotten people in the door of, yeah, these metrics are cool, now what? Right. We're starting to fill the gap of here's what, and answer that question.
Right.
Yeah, you've talked about a lot of additions to bring you to 4.0, right? Is there anything along the way in 1, 2, or 3 that you guys had to kind of get rid of from anything that you've learned, something that wasn't working or doing what it was supposed to, or anything like that?
Everything just keeps getting refined. I think the base of Whoop was always pretty strong. So like in the first what's called the 2.0 was the first iteration that I think was available for consumers. And you had to start and stop everything, right? You had to start and stop your sleep. You had to start and stop your activities. Like the main jump there was auto detection of activity. And then the next jump from that was auto classification. And then it was, how can we expand the journal entries? Like, how do we get beyond the initial 8? Did you have alcohol within 2 hours of bed? Did you have caffeine within 4? Did you share, like all the very basic ones that started to like a fully customizable suite with, sliding tabs of to really find out about yourself. The ability to connect heart rate. It's really all just, the base was really solid. So the team that created this, our founders are really thoughtful and went through a lot of iterations. Whoop existed basically for like 4 or 5 years before a product actually hit the market. So to arrive at that with the form factor, with the hardware and the algorithms such that they were, like it's been in a good place. So I think that sometimes things take longer, but that's kind of the Whoop way of validating it, make sure we fix all the bugs before we release something that could have issues.
Yeah, absolutely. And what was it being used for through those first, I think you said 4 years?
I mean, it was really, it was, so if you look at the main Whoop metrics, so sleep was always kind of what we built upon. Um, it's easy to measure, or well, it's not easy to measure. Let me go back on. It's not easy to measure, but it's probably the thing that people can relate to most
Yeah.
is, okay, I want to measure my sleep. And through, our founder, Will Ahmed, or our CEO, one of our founders, he wrote a senior thesis at Harvard on heart rate variability and how that's a very good indicator of sort of readiness on each day and over time, and training effect. So the team that was built around that, did a ton of research and found that, like, okay, the best time to measure that is during sleep. So let's be the best at measuring sleep. So that's how it started. And it was big, it's bulky. If you ever come to Whoop HQ, we have all the different iterations. Like, it used to be like a box with this big thing that you put around your wrist and you'd like plug it into a wall. So like and then was it going to look like a watch? No, let's get rid of the watch face. Okay, now let's make it a little sleeker. So sleep was always the base. Working with sleep institutions and third parties to continue refining it and validate the technology and our metrics. We created this recovery score, so that's the sweet spot. Emily Capodilupo created basically this algorithm that can take all these metrics, and that algorithm and our recovery score has also been validated. So all these things have taken time, but have gone through the proper sort of research channels to be peer reviewed and then published, so that the recovery score is valid. And heart rate variability with resting heart rate, your sleep quality and quantity, plus respiratory rate, gives you some very meaningful information. And then strain score was really kind of the last thing to come in of this sort of internal load. So there's so many things out there like Garmin's and anything that, like, tracks steps, Apple Health. It's just like, oh, I walked this far, I went this fast. Everybody's got a different level of fitness, and where are they on the sort of like endurance versus power scale? So what sort of workouts affect you differently? So if we all did the same CrossFit workout, we'd probably, let's call it like more traditional CrossFit, we'd probably have similar-ish strains. But if we skewed more to like an endurance side, if you guys are less endurance inclined, or like aerobically inclined, then that strain's going to go way higher, as opposed to someone who's got, a good base, like let's say they're a runner or a cyclist for a long period of time. Their strain's just not going to go up, and vice versa. Like if you're doing gymnastics, you're not sweating at all. You're just, yeah, okay, this is great. And their heart rate's just through the roof because it's incredibly hard for them, or they're just going to fail. So that was the last piece that was sort of built.
So you're talking about the sleekness. I just want to mention I've been wearing Whoop for a number of years now, and I have the 3.0 still. And one of the things I really love about it is that I can move it to where I want it. And as a gymnast, and I would assume that this would be similar for a weightlifter as well, wearing a watch gets in the way of my wrist. I can't do handstand work if I'm wearing an Apple Watch, or I'm wearing whatever other device. So the fact that I can move it around was an amazing feature for me, something that was light, that would allow me to not feel like it was bulky and in the way, as well as sleeping with it. Every other device I had trouble sleeping with, and this one doesn't bother me when I sleep. So that was one of the things that kind of pulled me towards saying, okay, how does Whoop separate itself from others that are out there tracking similar things or whatever it might be, was the wearability of it. Like realistically, something that you would wear on a regular basis. So for me, that was a really big kind of feature that might not seem technical or data driven, but was a big standing out point for me in terms of actually wearability.
Yeah, I mean, I think you kind of nailed a big point of it, Dave, is that we, at some point in our lifetime, our logo was always on, because you never had to take your Whoop strap off. It's fully waterproof. It's got the charger that charges externally, and you just slide on top. That's a unique thing, right? So it used to be like a 2-day battery life. Now it's 5. And I can't believe it used to be like a day or 2. That was like a nightmare. But it dies all the time. Like, what the hell? I don't know what's going on without my data. But the point is that it's comfortable, and you almost forget about it, right? If you throw it up on the bicep, and I think especially with the Whoop body stuff now, you're really going to forget about it in a positive way, and then you're going to have all the data that you want.
Yeah. Now I do have a couple of questions with regards to. I'm sure you get questions like this a lot or notes about it, but I've had some clients, some other friends that have had them, and the data that is given to them in terms of recovery, in terms of strain, it's a positive or negative response mechanism in a lot of ways. You get what you think to be a good amount of sleep, and you wake up and you're 20% recovery, you're in the red. And from a psychological standpoint, you go, oh crap, now my Whoop is telling me I should be tired. And I didn't feel tired, but now suddenly I'm feeling like crap. And
Right.
some people have said to me that it's been like a negative kind of reinforcement in some ways where they're feeling something that they didn't after looking at that. Have you ever come across that kind of question or comment or experience yourself? And what's kind of the response in that kind of situation?
Yeah. So that how people feel is valid, right? To some degree, perception is reality with
Hmm.
anything. Um, if you look at Whoop in the daily level, and it can be paralyzing sometimes, right? If you get in a bit of a rut, especially if you've been on a good green streak. So let's say that you've been doing everything right, your numbers are nice and high. When you see a dip, it's going to look bad, but hey, I when I got on Whoop, my heart rate variability was 50 milliseconds, and I've brought it all the way up to 105. So when I go to 70, it's still better than when I started. So it's all relative, right?
Hmm.
Um, and it's important to look at it in terms of a broader picture. Like, what's the trend? Is this just an off day? Can I kind of pin it on something of like, did I eat late? Did I get poor sleep? Like, kind of going through a checklist of, well, let me look at my sleep. Did I not get enough REM sleep? Did I not get slow wave sleep? Was I up a lot? Was I hot? Again, the eating late's a big one. Did I drink coffee
Hmm.
late? Any of that stuff? Like, there's a million things it could be. I had a stressful day. Like, there, so many things could set you off to have that sort of data fluctuation, and that's normal, right? That heart rate variability is the most important aspect that we're kind of looking at, and it's supposed to fluctuate, and that doesn't mean that you can't go out and perform though. So
Hmm.
that's where I think people have to kind of think about that in the context of, all right, is this a one-off, and let me kind of see how I feel. So if uh you got, I don't know, some sort of, like, you're going to do the CrossFit total, and you wake up with the green recovery, you're like, okay, good, I should feel great, but you might not feel great. Like, the flip side is, I feel a little stiff, I need to warm up a little bit more. Like, it's another data point in the full suite of data of your life. So you can, like, I PR'd my back squat in a with like a 15% recovery. Like,
Hmm.
that happens. My wife's run a marathon with the 25% recovery. Like, anything can happen, and you can still go and perform. I did a podcast with an Olympic rower, this guy Tom George. So 540, he broke 540 on a 2K like 2 times, and the second time he did it, he was in the red, just like on a random day. So it's like, you can absolutely perform. You just have to understand it's just a data point. However, if you start to see 2, 3, 4, 5 red days in a row, something's probably going on. That you need to look at is like, am I not sleeping? Is it some sort of psychological mental stress? Are you in an altitude, right? If you change, air quality, any of this stuff, like, it's looking at the sort of macro and micro all together.
Hmm.
And for some people, it still is just too much though,
Hmm.
Mhm.
especially around competitions. So some people just be like, I just don't want to know, and then
Mhm.
look later. So
Right.
I think that's in everyone's psyche, but the more that people get kind of comfortable with the data and how they utilize it within the daily context of, all right, yeah, all right, that's interesting. And if you actually use the journal, you can figure out like what behaviors are possibly causing either good or bad results.
Hmm. Yeah, it seems like a really good perspective of saying that the trend is what mattered rather than that single
Mhm.
data point, right? Like
Yeah,
it's trended
exactly.
in one direction. Yeah.
Yeah, I've experienced that, just through the years competing at a high level, and it's easy to let, like, if you're traveling overseas and you're not getting the rest that you need. What I found is that you just have to stay on routine as long as you possibly can. And if I have to get up and compete at 8 a.m. on one day where I normally train at 2 or what at 2 p.m. and I know I lift better and I'm stronger during those training sessions at that time, what I learned the hard way is that your body is capable of overcoming one bad day, right? So like you said, if those points are reading low, it's not something that's saying that you can't perform. But have you guys noticed any readings? So say, someone, you go do a PR on a day where your readings are bad. And again, your body can overcome that one day. I that's absolutely true. But what happens the following days? So if you perform at a very high level and you strain yourself during a time of that low reading, what are the following days look like? Are they going to be down for multiple days in a row? And, if so, that information, I would say, would be important to help you know what to do to move forward.
I think it really depends on what that, let's call it PR or top performance is. If you run a marathon, you're probably gonna be in the red, like for a few days, because that's like an extreme feat and that takes longer to recover. PRing your back squat or CrossFit total, you might see like a stagnation, but you could also come back and be fine if you kind of have it really dialed in. So again, looking at, let's say you wake up with the red recovery and you get this workout. The thought process is not that I can't do this. It's what are all the steps I'm going to do? What are the screws I'm going to tighten so that when I do have to do this at 2 p.m., I'm in the best possible position I can be. I'm going to hydrate more. I'm going to really fine tune the nutrition. I'm going to mobilize a little bit more. So that's the same answer for how am I recovering from a very good but strenuous effort is what steps am I taking? Am I getting the right sleep? Am I refueling the right way? And it might take a few days, but are you actually doing the things that you can control? Are you controlling the things you can control? Or are you just hoping that, hey, I hit this number and I'm going to do whatever the hell I want. I'm going to drink 12 pack of beer because I hit this number.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, I'm not in the green. What happened? So like, sometimes you just got to look inside and say, okay, that was me.
Well, that would certainly be me. I would go drink a 6 or a 12 pack after I get done competing. So I'm probably not a good
and that's
example.
fine though too, right? Like, like people shouldn't be afraid of the red, right? You kind of know when it's coming, right? I was in Jackson Hole for like 3 or 4 days, and it's just like I have single digit recoveries every day, and it's just like, all right, like this is what it is. Train a little bit less because this is a different environment, but like you just kind of adjust and keep moving forward, because what we never want to do is have this data just sort of like paralyze you and be like, it says I can't do anything. No, that's actually probably the worst thing is if you don't do anything. So it's just anytime you sort of feel this stress, like there's an action that can be taken that hopefully will relieve that.
Yeah. Well, and you talk about paralyzing and looking at the data, but I wonder, someone that's new to the app and they're coming into 4.0, they've never seen any of the other ones, and there's all this information that they're getting. Are there any recommendations that you have for not letting that amount of data overwhelm you? How does someone very new to this, trying to use it obviously for health and to be the best that they can be, how do they prioritize what they're looking at, I guess?
Good question. In the first 2 weeks to 30 days, just live life and try and get more sleep. So Whoop is really learning you in that first 14 to 30 days. And, we get all the sort of outliers out and, law of averages and all that stuff. Just get more sleep, because that's the thing that doesn't need to calibrate or need time to learn you, or we don't need to learn that. We're looking to get 85% sleep performance or better, like in those first few days. Like, can I just improve the amount that I'm sleeping? That's one. Everything else, just see what happens if we sleep more. Okay, I nailed my sleep performance goal. Now it's, if you click in your sleep for the night and you look at sleep efficiency, am I above 90%? Can I get to 95%? So sleep efficiency is, once you go to sleep, how well are you staying asleep? So limiting disturbances, creating this sort of good bedtime routine, so you're winding down and actually shutting the body down so we can get, restful sleep. Okay, great. I've hit that number. Now, how am I doing in terms of REM sleep and slow wave sleep? Am I getting, 45 to 50% between the two of them as a percentage of my total night's sleep? Like the whole first month can just be like sleep. And that, like, look at that. Okay, I nailed that. And then it's like, all right, let's understand heart rate variability a little bit more. I think people kind of know resting heart rate is more indicative of just capacity and overall, let's call it fitness, cardiovascular fitness. Respiratory rate, if you're looking at it, it should be a pretty static number, and we've built it in now that if with those sort of health monitors and the metrics, like, hey, this is off, you should be concerned, or no, this is like high but it's in your normal range, like don't really worry about it. So with COVID and all that stuff, so we've seen that the data around that and the sort of COVID or respiratory spikes. Heart rate variability is the deepest dive of, you need a little bit of time to work yourself into it. So I think my advice to anybody is just live your life, observe. Like I would say, to go into any situation. Anytime you're going in, you're like, I'm going to fix everything now. Observe first, understand what's happening, and then you can, take changes. So you're effectively measuring, so then you can retest, make a manipulation and retest. And then as you're doing these things, do like one or two things at a time, and not be like, I'm going to go paleo and then I'm going to start taking CBD and I'm going to wear a night mask, and like, whoa, pump the brakes, drink like more water, like do something really simple and tangible. Like that's the easiest thing. That's a, one that I've tried a few times, where it's like, I'm just going to overload on water in the first half of the day. And for like 3-day spike, I had a 3-day spike in HRV. I saw my highest HRVs ever. I didn't change anything else. Trained the same, ate the same, just water. Like, so these little things, like you figure out, like do simple stuff first before you think you need to build a cryo tank in your house or something.
Yeah. So, sounds like the way we teach, huh, Dave?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Keep things simple.
It starts the foundation, right? So speaking about the way that we train, the way that we teach, I'm curious your thoughts on the way that maybe me and Chad train, because I love wearing my Whoop, and I love being able to track my Metcons, and when my heart rate is my indication of my strain. But in a lot of cases, as a gymnast, my strain is dictated around different types of workouts. Meaning, I'll do a handstand workout that is incredibly challenging, muscle fatiguing for 2 hours, and I get no response from my Whoop, basically saying I didn't work out at all.
Right.
And for me, it's a little frustrating to say, like, okay, well, how am I supposed to measure a strain on a particular day that's not heart rate specific? You know what I mean? It's not a cardiovascular workout. I'm curious from your perspective, if there is anything in the works, there's anything that you see that could be done to measure that type of a strain for an athlete that is not doing solely, HRV type,
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Strain as it's built right now is skewed towards cardiovascular training, right? So the higher, you're going to get a higher strain for running, cycling, rowing, any of that stuff, or just keeping your heart rate consistently high for a period of time. We just acquired, this is all public information, a company called Push. It's velocity-based training. Amazing team. We're really excited to have them in, and we're building their technology into Whoop technology. And the goal is to have a completely different or a new measurement of strain for exactly these things you're talking about, where we're hitting sort of like muscular failure, or we're lifting heavy, like any of that stuff. It's really important to know, because up to this point, you're right, especially since, look, let's talk gymnastics. You're as proficient as it gets in gymnastics. So you can do a high volume, and your heart rate's going to be low-ish because you have such a volume of this type of training under your belt. So it's going to look like less, but that's like anybody that's like kind of specialized in their space. Like a rower's heart rate's going to be much lower than a non-rower for the same workout, and they're going to go much faster. When you're looking at these sort of like let's say you did a heavy gymnastic session or a heavy lifting session, you're probably going to see that the next day in the heart rate variability. So yes, it's not super gratifying in the moment of like, damn, that was hard. Like, and my strain is low. This is where you have to kind of take the strain number as just another data point, because you know that the work you did is legit. You're like, that's exactly the work I wanted to do. I know that this means that I can do X things. And, you know, that's for anybody, right? It's like, great. I think anybody that's very serious about their craft, they know there's certain outputs that you need to hit and certain markers along the way. So if that's what you're training towards, again, cool. It's more like, well, I know I have to do a 10K row, and I know I want to break 140, or, you know, I want to break 135, whatever the hell it is for anybody. It's like, I'm going to do that. And then I'll look at what the strain is. Like, it's kind of like, oh, okay. What I would say to you is you're really proficient at gymnastics, and this new push integration is going to give you better numbers, you know, in the future.
So can you elaborate a little bit on what push is bringing to the table in terms of what metrics will be tracked and how that partnership actually works?
Yeah, so they're a part of Whoop now. They're velocity-based training. So you want me to go into velocity-based training?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So velocity-based training is really highly utilized in, I would say, team lifting settings. So like college weight rooms, football, stuff like that. It's another way to sort of make sure people are lifting the right weights on the right days instead of just going off of percentages. So what a lot of these velocity-based systems have, they either have like cables or 3D cameras all over the place, and a coach will input the workout ahead of time. So it'll be, you know, 5x3 front squats at X% up based off of, you know, somebody's numbers. And they do their first set. And if they're not hitting the correct speed, you know, out of the bottom, basically, it's going to adjust on the fly. And it'll say, nope, you're fatigued. We're going to bring either the loading down, or we're going to change the rep scheme type of thing. So it's another way to kind of help people get the most out of their strength training. When it's kind of not an accessory, but it's not the main protocol. Like if they're a football player, like they're not training to compete in the Olympics for weightlifting. You know, they're trying to be the best football player. They're trying to be really strong. So they want to make sure that they can still get another their football training while still making gains in the weight room. So that's largely what velocity-based training is it's adjusting on the fly instead of just saying, go hit 75, 80, 85% for each day. And push is a wearable one. So they have wearable tech themselves, and what we're working on over the next few months is how do we get that built into Whoop to better quantify this weightlifting, CrossFit, gymnastics strain. The roadmap is kind of open, to be honest on that, and there's a lot of exciting possibilities for it. So I know it's going to make a big impact. Once I have more to share with you, I certainly will. It's still kind of in that, let's understand the communities that we know. Okay, like gymnastics, it's actually the first time I've ever heard gymnastics is like, but it's 100%. It's like anything that's you can really go to muscular failure. Like that's the type of stuff we want to be able to better quantify.
What do you think about that, Chad, in terms of application for what you do?
Oh yeah, it's incredible. I mean, I can see, you know, a lot of maybe older school coaches, you know, hesitant to use something like that. You know, even myself, I think like, you know, a lot of times I get asked if I use, I can't even think of the apps now or whatever, but the video stuff where you can draw lines and slow things down and everything. Coach's Eye, I think, is one of them.
Coach's Eye. Yeah.
So yeah, when that was first coming around, and you know, all of my online athletes ask if I use Coach's Eye or whoever else asks, and I'm like, I have my own Coach's Eye. I don't need that, right? It's another way that we can learn more about ourselves and our athletes, though. You know, and I like, you know, in my programs, I write a tremendous amount of by feel, and as I've written more programs, instead of saying one certain percentage, most of the time there's a range of percentage. So that says what comes with that is I have to teach the athletes that are on my programs what bifeel is. What does bifeel really mean? And they have to learn more about themselves to really perform my program to the best of their ability. But that's not always easy to make those calls, especially if you're an online athlete. And I know for myself too, if something is written in my program, for me to back down on that and not just fight through and force my way through the percentage that's indicated, it's hard to do. It's not easy to take mentally and emotionally and everything else. So I think perhaps a device that can help you read those things and tell you, give you if you can learn how to use it and learn to be okay with what it's telling you to do, I think it will be easier for someone to take than having to make that decision on their own. And especially with so many athletes doing online coaching now, where the coach isn't right there in front of them and watching every single rep. I think it's going to be tremendously valuable if they'll truly use it the way that it is intended to be used.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's a concept of like fluid periodization, right? I think it's, if the more classical template is periods of training with the, we're just going to build. It's like, all right, we know we want to improve X over a period of time, and being able to adjust down and say, yeah, I can't hit that today, but I can still hit like a good number and move really well.
Right.
Or, even being willing to like pull a hard workout for the sake of like, I'm kind of teetering on the edge of falling apart. I'm going to pull back a day or two, and you're still moving forward, right? Availability is still the most important aspect in, continuing to move forward. So I think this will certainly help.
Is there a feature within Whoop that you think is underutilized, or one that you would kind of point people to that they might not kind of jump out at right away?
I think that the journal is underutilized.
Can you talk about the journal a little bit? Like, where is that, and how do people access it? Things like that.
So it's on your main page. So if you were to just go into your Whoop app and you're looking at the main screen, just above your sleep, there's a little down up arrow, and there's something that says start activity, and then there's something that looks like a clipboard and a pencil. If you were to click that, it pulls up your journal, and within the journal, you can select all the different things that you want. So did I take melatonin? There's like hundreds in there. So, and it's just going to keep getting more and more expansive. And what the journal is it's the behaviors that you can say, yes, I'm doing it. No, I'm not. Sliding scales. And then we tie that back to your sleep data, your heart rate variability, all of these things, so that each month we can tell you these things are working, these things are not working. When you do this, X amount of instances, you see this jump in REM sleep. When you do this, X amount of instances, you see this detraction in sleep efficiency, stuff like that. So you're taking the actions, you're just recording them, and then we're giving you the feedback. So you don't have to play a guessing game of what's maybe working and what's not. So I think people get bored of it, or they just skip through it. And it's truly the most important thing. Otherwise, you're kind of like, man, I feel okay. Like, then we get back to that original one. I feel better than what Whoop's telling me. There's an opportunity for you to understand a little bit more what's probably happening. And there might be something constant there that you're just like, you got a blind eye to. So that's the biggest thing of self-discovery, this sort of ability to do these micro experiments, see if something works, and then get the feedback. Change. Okay. And then once it becomes like a normal thing, like, I know that works, you can take that out of the journal and try something else. It's like, I'm always going to do this. I'm always going to take, or I'm always going to wear a night mask or something, a sleep mask. Great. I know it works. I can take that out because that's my default. And then let me put something else into measure. I think that, and something new, this is a new feature. It's separate from the 4.0, but it's cool, is we have, community teams. So you could have one for this Power Monkey camp that you're at right now.
We have a Power Monkey team.
Yeah. Going. And it's got a chat feature now. So it's not just looking at your data with all your teammates and friends. Now you can chat it out, you can bullshit, you can, lift people up, ask questions. Yeah, it's good. Like it's it's a more immersive experience. So I think that that's something that will take this sort of engagement with teams and continue to like normalize data and make people less anxious about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we started. We just got back from Greece a couple of weeks ago, and some of the other participants in the event wanted to join the Power Monkey team and be a part of it and just see where the coaches were at and kind of track their data in relation to the people that they were getting taught by. It's a little unnerving as a coach to have all the athletes to work with, like, crush you every day and, and just be like, okay, is this actually okay for them to see all of this data? But it has been really fun to be able to use those new features, and to actually create the team has given us another reason to actually interact and talk to each other and stay on top of each other each day. We text and be like, hey, where are you at today? What do your numbers look like? Are we working out? And for us, it's just another way to actually stay in contact and have a reason to build that community a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a great tool for coaches. Now you kind of brought that up. You can see where a person is if you're coaching a class, or even if it's a personal session or virtual, any of it. You can see kind of how your athlete's doing, like, and have that check-in. Hey, you've been kind of low yellows. Everything going all right? Like, what's happening? Or if they're coming into your class, like it's an evening class, and they're at like a 16 strain, and you're like, hey, like, what's going on? You all right? Like, we're gonna go like a little bit lighter today so you can keep the stimulus, or like you can kind of have an eye on them already so that everybody has a good experience and gets fitness and keeps coming back. So the more that kind of the coaches know and the athletes trust that, then it's going to be good for everybody.
Yeah, the athlete trust portion is pretty important to that too. I'm sure if the athlete is joining the team and all that stuff, then they're understanding that the coach knowing the information is a part of that relationship. But the trust is a huge part of letting people know all of this additional information. So it's a big part of saying, okay, I'm part of this community. I'm not just going to work out, but I'm sharing some information that I would normally just know on my own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah,
So,
I think the community aspect of that whole thing is the biggest part of it. I mean, it's what we find here at Power Monkey, and of course, what's made CrossFit. I think the biggest thing that's made CrossFit so successful is the community part of it. So bringing that into that ability into the app, I think is awesome, and it's going to help a lot of people do better because you have that extreme accountability. I wonder, is that your favorite aspect for you personally of the app, or is there something else that is just like you're most proud of, or something that you personally benefit from the most?
I love the journal, and largely because it was something I've worked on very hard with our VP of Performance Science, Kristen Holmes, and sort of expanding it and finding the right things. Something useful now, and it's had a couple different iterations. So we have like a weekly performance assessment and a monthly performance assessment. So each week it's kind of looking at how was your strain compared to last week? How much time were you training? How was your sleep? So like a true week to week. So it's keeping you checked in with like probably the most actionable metrics. So sometimes it's like, am I performing optimally? Oh, like you manage strain and sleep, you strain and recovery well, but you can get more sleep, or you can be more consistent. Like, so we're giving you little kind of tips for the week. And I think that really gets people, like, I think that's my favorite thing is I think I'm performing optimally. I'm keeping things like more or less in range. But what can I do? I like comparing the week to week, particularly around sleep, and be like, yeah, that makes sense. Or like, why are you staying up? I think that happens to people a lot. And I'll just speak as someone who is like a 14-month-old son. It's like you get him down, you're like, I got to breathe for a second. And before you know it, it's like 10:30, 11. You're like, what the hell was I just doing? Because he's getting up early anyway. And like, so like there's a fixed time. You're definitely getting up. And I think when I look at the Whoop stuff on that, it's like, man, you got to be better than that. So it kind of reins me back in. So I would say that's my favorite. I think the community feature is cool.
Yep.
I use that to check on my parents, honestly. Yeah. So
tips are huge. That's huge. I would agree that's probably the that would be my favorite part of it as well.
So you mentioned the acquisition of Push and obviously the launch of 4.0, but where do you really see Whoop going within the next couple of years? Is there anything you're really excited about, or features, or where do you think it can go within the next couple of years in terms of how it interacts with an athlete's daily activity?
So something I think is really cool is the integrations we've had into like large scale broadcasts on a national and even international level. The CrossFit Games, we had Whoop Live, the live heart rate. We want to expand that in future events and in all categories, not just CrossFit. We've done it with golf at the Ryder Cup. That was a big thing. We've done it in NASCAR. And how do we keep kind of expanding and normalizing more and more Whoop data on a large stage? So that's kind of how we want to think about it in terms of like elite athletes and leagues. For everybody, it's how do we make this sort of data set so helpful and necessary that it's like as necessary as like your gym shoes. And like how do you become like part of the starter pack of doing anything, not like joining a CrossFit? It could be I'm just trying to improve life. So that's kind of where the health report's aimed. Like how do we make this more about the wellness? And honestly, like who even knows what acquisitions come down, but that's what all the fundraising's for, is to continue putting that back into the product and doing these really, really cool initiatives and putting out something that's truly differentiated. Other things measure sleep. Other things measure some version of strain or internal load, but nobody does it as well as we do. And nobody else does these other things that we're doing. So I think that's the thing that's the most exciting. It is kind of every day you might get some information. You're like, holy shit, that's wild. I can't believe we're doing that. I think that's the thing. So it's not one thing in particular. It's just the suite of everyone, this sort of tidal wave of everyone's excited and ready to work hard to keep pushing this.
Sure. Yeah, the partnerships within different major leagues and obviously the CrossFit one we're a little bit more familiar with, but what other leagues are you partnering with right now? You mentioned Ryder Cup, you mentioned NASCAR stuff.
We have PGA. We have the PGA. We have a relationship with EF Pro Cycling. So they're one of the major cycling teams in the tour. And internationally, we've got a bunch of different running ones, probably smaller scale that, it's not as like centralized of a organization. Running and cycling are kind of like different beasts than other things because there's so many different subsets. Right. But yeah, we're always, we've had to deal with the NFLPA for a long time, and it's how do we keep getting into more and more leagues? So that's that sort of expansion. It'll be interesting to see where it goes. We've done, so yeah, we have all of golf. We have every LPGA, PGA, all that stuff. But it's selective, right? It's just because we can't be everywhere, but what's the right market? There's no reason to hop into a market if we're not totally sure. Sure. Or have some data behind it. So you never know. Like CrossFit is actually one of those where it was kind of like we didn't realize that was going to work. The idea was probably like if the first couple of people on Whoop are Michael Phelps when he was younger and LeBron, you think, okay, we're going to get big athletes like this. This is what's going to make the company. And then because CrossFit is this community based and word of mouth, and it's like, man, you got to get this thing like, and driven by data in general, right? We're always sort of measuring and retesting and trying to push the bounds. So you never know kind of what a sticking point is going to be. Like golf was another unexpected one. Like when Rory just started wearing, then Justin Thomas starts wearing it, and all of a sudden I'm in a pro shop in Chatham, Massachusetts, and somebody's like, yo, is that the thing I saw Rory wearing on TV? So like you kind of never know. And that's a cool aspect of it too. Absolutely.
I mean, it sounds like there's so many things on the pipeline that this is really just the start. What you guys are doing right now, this 4.0, is going to lead to so many bigger and more impressive things in terms of how an athlete can optimize their training, right? It sounds like that's the main objective, is how can we get the right information to the athletes so they can actually become better at utilizing every single day. And I love using mine. I'm a big fan of it. I know a bunch of our team Power Monkey is as well. I'm excited to be able to see how we can actually use some of the new features a little bit more. But I really appreciate you taking the time to kind of walk us through what 4.0 looks like. And it's unfortunate it's taken this long to get you on, Mike, but I think it was an appropriate time since you just had the launch and you had some big news, so it worked out pretty well.
Yeah, no, I'm so glad we could make it happen. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Before we get you out of here, we got a few last minute questions that we normally ask all our guests. I know you're an athlete yourself, so these won't be kind of too far out there. But first one, what sport or discipline do you prefer, weightlifting or gymnastics? As a 6'7" rower, I can't imagine that either is kind of in your wheelhouse. But
which are we defining? So I like aspects of both. It's taken me a really long time for like my like squat clean and squat snatch to get anywhere decent. I'm much more of a power kind of guy. And same thing with gymnastics. But I did just test out the other day that I can still do all my muscle ups and handstand push-ups despite not really being in a gym. So I'm happy with that.
And being a new dad, all the
I've been training in the back alley behind our house with just some. So like the lifting's actually gotten much better. It got much better over the pandemic period. I like them both. I think like anybody, you go through seasons of like, I want to get so good at gymnastics, and then you're like, all right, I don't want to do gymnastics for 3 months. So because yeah, you're right. Neither is particularly easy for me.
Well, Chad, I think we both get a point on that one.
Yeah,
you both do.
I'll absolutely take that because it's better than you getting the point and me not. Mike, he is way ahead of me. Most people on the podcast go to gymnastics for some reason, so I've got a lot of work to do. So I'll take an even.
Yeah, oh, for sure. It's definitely even.
So question number 2, anybody that you think would be great for us to have on the podcast that you would recommend?
Man, so many. Yeah. I mean, probably people you guys have done.
You got to get Sarah on.
I was gonna say you could get Sarah. I didn't want to be like shamelessly plugging my wife, but Sarah is more interesting than I am.
Tell all the listeners all of her amazing accolades and.
Yeah, so Sarah's we met in college. She's 2012 Olympian in rowing. She won 2 world championships prior to that in 2010 and 2011. And I mean she's director of marketing at a startup. She says a lot of cool stuff. Like she's on the board of directors for US Rowing, like all these. She's badass. So no one can tell her story quite like her. I'm usually her hype man, but I think she's great. And then in that same vein, like I don't know if you guys have done Kelly Starrett, but that's always one of my favorites. And I know Hinshaw is part of your program, so you probably don't need to do Chris.
Chris is right here with us. He's actually probably like across the street right now.
Yeah. So I did a podcast with Chris at the games. It was like 2 hours long.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I don't. We'll see what that gets cut down to.
Excellent. Well, appreciate those suggestions. We'll definitely reach out to Sarah first. We have had Kelly out in the past, and I think probably we're due for another Kelly update, Chad, at some point.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to say we've had Kelly and Chris, but I'm sure they'll be on again at some point anyway. So Chris is kind of a regular. But next question, any books that you've come across here recently that you'd recommend, and it can be on any topic, what we've talked about here today or just anything else in general?
Yeah. So there's one book I always come back to is Essentialism. Have you guys read that book?
I have not.
No.
Oh man, Essentialism like changed my life. And more or less what it's saying is that people tend to do this thing. If you're like a ball of energy internally, we go like a million ways, like a millimeter in a million different directions, as opposed to putting all of that into one direction. Mm-hmm. So what are the questions and answers we need to ask ourselves and answer to simplify the process to keep everything kind of going, right? So it's amazing. I would highly recommend Essentialism to anybody.
Awesome. That sounds great. We got to add that to the list for sure. Thank you for that recommendation.
Yeah, amazing book.
Yeah. Mike, man, it was great to have you on. Great to get to know you a little bit. Hopefully, we can keep in contact. Certainly, do an update show with you as well, and talk more about Whoop and the things that you guys have going on. Do you have any parting words for our listeners, and let us know where folks can keep up with you?
Yeah, well, first, thanks again for having me on. I got into CrossFit probably in like 2014, and Power Monkey was always one of those things where I was like, man, they really know what they're doing. So listeners, you're never too good for the basics and the fundamentals, and no matter how good you are, you go back and revisit it, because it'll make you a better coach, it'll make you a better athlete. The further you get away from it in anything, you forget the grind and how hard it was to get there in the first place.
Mhm.
You lose the appreciation and the sort of empathy to be in someone else's shoes that's trying to get up. So that's what I would say. You can definitely follow Whoop at Whoop on everything. WHOOP. If you want to follow me, it's Lombardi Michael on Instagram. It's largely going to be my gymnastics and weightlifting feats, plus
Amazing.
my
Perfect.
There you go.
my family and the baby. So and Philadelphia sports. So if you don't like Philly sports,
Oh, why?
it's not for
why
you.
start with that? I can't. We're not putting this podcast up. You're Philly.
That's right. I'm in the gutter here on everything.
Oh,
So
man.
So am I, as a New York Giant Mets fan. It's like the worst thing in the world. So
it's real
we're-
dumpster fire up here in the Northeast.
Perfect.
yeah.
Perfect. Well, thanks again, Mike. And to our listeners, as always, we very much appreciate you guys listening in. Be sure to head over to powermonkeyfitness.com for services and upcoming events. Also, check out our Instagram pages for regular teaching and technical content at Power Monkey Fitness, at Dave Durante, and at Ollie Chad. And on behalf of Power Monkey Fitness, we're your host. I'm Chad Vaughn with Dave Durante. And until next time, guys, thank you all for listening.